Welcome to Padre's Corner. It's the show that's about, well, pretty much anything I want it to be about. I'm your host, Father Robert Balacer, Padre SJ in the Twit TV chat room, the digital Jesuit. Now, Padre's Corner was created as a way to talk to you, the lovely men and women, the boys and girls, the geeks and the guys who populate chat room, the thing that makes Twit what it is. Because anyone can make content, we're making a community. Now, for the next hour or so, we're just going to toss around a couple of stories that I found interesting that have crossed my desk. We've got a guest who we can talk to later on in the show who's going to tell you a bit more about this whole Jesuit life thing that I'm a member of. But before we get to that, I thought maybe it was time for some freaking science. Now, if you've ever been shot, if you've ever worried about getting shot, if you've ever wondered if you're going to be surviving getting shot, I got one question for you. Got sponges? That's right. There is a company that's been working on a remedy for people who get shot on the battlefield. Now, if you are keeping up with military tech at all, you know that one of the biggest problems for soldiers on a battlefield is not the actual trauma. I mean, that is horrible. Modern warfare is unforgiving, and it will kill you as quickly as anything else. But the biggest problem is after the trauma, the blood loss. The blood loss is what's going to kill you. Now, in many cases, simply tourniqueting the part of your body that has been hurt, your extremities, will be enough to staunch the blood flow until they can get you to a hospital. But if you've been shot in a place that cannot be staunched, that cannot be tourniqueted, that cannot have pressure applied, somewhere like the shoulder or maybe the chest, the abdomen, you're in trouble. I mean, it's going to take you at least a couple of minutes, maybe even an hour to get you to a field hospital, longer if you're in a hot zone. And if you've been shot in one of those areas, well, there's just no real way to save you. That was until this company developed a thing that they're calling the, the XStat Syringe. Now, the idea is simple. Rather than stuffing gauze into the wound, which is what they would normally do, they've developed a way to get little sponges. That's right. These are tiny little sponges that have been coated with coagulants. They allow the blood to clot, which will seal the part of your body that is seeping out blood. Now, the entire thing is contained within a syringe. So you've got dozens of sponges inside this syringe, and you're allowed to push the syringe into the hole made by the bullet and then inject them in order to put pressure on the wound and to start the clotting process, hopefully saving your life. Now, the cool thing about this technology is that it's designed to be used one-handed. The obvious applications are that everyone's going to have one of these in their med kit, and if they do get hit, they have a way to staunch the flow until they can be brought over to a field hospital. Now, the science and tech part about it is, well, aside from the fact that it's a war instrument, it's pretty cool. The developers needed to find a way to keep the sponges dry, to keep them sterile, and to deliver them into deep wounds. Now, anyone can get a coagulant into a cut on an arm, but when you've got an actual penetrating trauma, you need something to get it deep into the wound before it starts getting coated with blood, and that's why it looks like a syringe. Now, this is one of the initiatives that the new Army is taking on. They're looking at technologies like these, which are called force multipliers, way to keep their soldiers on the battlefield longer, ways to keep them safer, ways to make them, well, more durable. Now, ultimately, you probably know my stance. I would prefer that we have no wars at all. But if we're going to keep doing this, at least there's a way to save the people who get hurt on the battlefield. Now, I know that there are people out there who are a little gaga about cryptocurrency. I'm a bit into Doge myself. So you've probably heard about this next story, and that is, yeah, MtGox has been shut down. They've gone bankrupt. They've lost $500 million worth of Bitcoins. Now, here's an interesting story here. MtGox was one of the very first Bitcoin exchanges. In fact, they were one of the largest Bitcoin exchange. At one point, they were responsible for about 80% of the transactions that were running through that system. Unfortunately, their security was a little lax. They had a specific flaw in the transaction system that allowed hackers for years to go ahead and pull Bitcoins out of the system. Now, the problem is that this wasn't a lot. They weren't pulling a whole lot of Bitcoins, but it was enough Bitcoins over the year that in the end, when they finally shut down, they disclosed that they had lost almost 750,000 Bitcoins of their customers and over 100,000 of their own. In real world terms, that's almost $500 million of actual currency. The other big thing about this is, well, the other Bitcoin exchanges are kind of ganging up on them, calling them a bad actor, saying, well, they didn't do the thing that they should have done. But the problem with saying that is Bitcoin doesn't really have a solution for this. Let's break it down. I'm not going to hate on cryptocurrency. You know my stand. I actually talked about this in Padre's Corner episode 1. The problem is they're calling for more regulation, but Bitcoin itself is resistant to regulation because Bitcoin and actually all cryptocurrencies by their nature are anonymous. Anonymous currencies, anonymous virtual currencies cannot be regulated like fiat currencies. So if you start saying, well, we need to be able to figure out who stole this money, we need to bring it back, we need to do financial accounting, we need to do financial forensics, you can't do that with an anonymous currency. I mean, you could start looking at transaction records and routers, but beyond that, it's basically gone. That money is gone. Now, there are other people who are going to say, well, wait a minute, this $400 million, that's not much. Didn't we just hear about a Canadian bank that lost $1.6 billion of their customers' money? I mean, just gone, not accounted for, just poof, and no one went to jail for that. Well, that's true. That's true. Yes, $1.6 billion is a lot. But that's not how you look at it. $1.6 billion may be a lot. $32 billion is a lot. These huge banking financial scandals do build up. But the problem with Bitcoin is when we're talking about 850,000 plus of Bitcoin, you don't look at it as $500 million. You look at that as 1/25th the supply of Bitcoin of all times. In other words, since we know that there will only be 21 million Bitcoins ever, you're looking at a huge percentage of the Bitcoins that will ever exist that have been stolen. That's, again, not a good thing. Now, there is already a class action lawsuit. A man by the name of Gregory Green in Chicago, he estimated that his Bitcoin loss was about 25 grand, so he decided to sue MtGox and for rightful cause. He said, look, if we were trusting you to be our broker, to be our exchange, we were paying for some security, some basic security, which you did not allow. If people were stealing from your exchange for years and you either never noticed it or you noticed it but didn't think it was a big enough problem to report, then there's definitely some complicity, there's definitely some incompetence, and you are definitely legally culpable. Good luck to all the people who lost money in that Bitcoin exchange. It is a heartbreaker. Now, I thought that maybe this might be a good time to introduce Padre's rant. I want to talk a little bit about the legal system. I want to talk about the things that make it so difficult at times. But before we get to that, have you ever wondered what your cats do at night? So now you know where your socks go when they go missing. Now, the reason why I wanted to play that is there's actually a group called Corridor Digital. If you've been wandering around on YouTube, you've probably heard about them. They're a wonderful group of content creators located in Los Angeles. They work with Freddie Wong, and they've just done some wonderful content over the year. Along with Freddie Wong, these are the guys that I most credit with starting the boom on YouTube of a new generation of content creators who realized that the same kinds of special effects, the same kinds of really cool, quick content, quirky content, techno content that we had previously expected to only come from the big studios who had huge budgets could now be done by a couple of guys with a computer and with an editor. They do most of their effects in After Effects, and I gotta say, they're probably one of my favorite groups of content creators on the internet. And what I love about Niko and Sam is that they've given me permission to replay their content on Padre's Corner. So expect to see more of it as we go along. Now, one of the things I really do want to plug is if you like any of the content that they've made, jump onto their YouTube page. I believe we've got the lower third right here, and take a look at all their videos, because every time they make a video, they do a breakdown. They show you exactly how they made those shots, how they composited the special effects, and what they had to do in order to take the shots in a way that would be usable in post-processing. It's a fantastic process, something that I really enjoy. Now, let's get away from that and let's talk a little bit about Padre's rant. You've probably heard about Arizona's bill to refuse service based on faith. Now, I don't want to get into this. I'm not about politics. I don't want to argue the politics of this. It was a bill. A bill is a normal part of the political process. It's part of the discourse. I'm not going to get upset that someone proposed a bill that maybe rankles my sensitivities, because that's part of the democratic process. More power to them. Now, even if we're not talking about partisan politics, I think we do need to look at how the bill came to be. The bill was vetoed just today, or actually it was yesterday, by Governor Jan Brewer, after several of the original supporters of the bill came forth and said, no, this actually is a bad thing. It looks bad. It won't have that much effect. This was kind of a bill for show. You really shouldn't sign it into law. Now, there's been a lot of coverage about this, whether or not this is the new GOP that is more sensitive to these issues, or if this was the old GOP for proposing the bill in the first place, or if this was even a transition between generations in the GOP. I don't care about any of that. That's actually not relevant. And again, this is not a GOP versus Democratic Party thing. This is something that's far more deeper and far more sinister. You see, the main problem is that this is something that has plagued both parties for years and years and years. And what I'm talking about is the showmanship of the extremist. What do I mean by the showmanship of the extremist? I mean that we now live in a political system in which you need to show that you will not compromise with your opponent. You will not compromise in any way, shape, or form. You will vote down all of their bills while proposing bills that are so far to the right or so far to the left that no one could possibly confuse you for them when they're looking at voting in the next quarter, in the next cycle. Now, this looks good on TV. I mean, partisan politics makes for good footage, but the problem is what it causes. Now, if we actually look at what happened in this bill's proposal and then death, you had a bunch of senators who voted for a bill thinking that there was no way it was going to pass. And that's what happened. They thought, well, I'm going to safely vote for this thing because it's going to fail in committee. It's going to fail before it gets to the governor's desk. And I can go on record as saying that, yes, I voted for this. Of course, I support your conservative values, but I don't have to worry about the ramifications of that bill actually going into law. This is broken. Now, let's take it beyond the state of Arizona, because it's not just about Arizona. What we've seen is that this sort of thing happens at the highest levels of law. Take a look at this little clip that I cut a few years back.
Speaker, in a minute or so, I'm speaking this morning. 2 more illegal aliens will be added to America's population. Maybe they'll climb over a fence, maybe they'll sneak off a boat, maybe they'll overstay an expired visa. All expect to find a better life here in the United States, but all are breaking the law. The millions of illegal aliens in this country right now impose a huge burden on America's cities. One of them was my city, Hazleton, Pennsylvania. That's why, as mayor, I was the first in the country to enact a local law cracking down on illegal immigration. Now other municipalities and states have taken up that fight. Seeing Arizona defend its law this week, I'm reminded how the federal government has failed to stop illegal immigration. States like Arizona and cities like Hazleton are forced to act because this administration and prior administrations refused to enforce immigration laws. On Wednesday, Chief Justice John Roberts said it best, quote, "It seems to me that the federal government just doesn't want to know who is here illegally or not." Well, Mr. Speaker, take it from someone who's been fighting against...
Yeah, so let's go ahead and cut away from that. Again, people in the chat room are starting to get a bit political. Please take a step back. I'm not saying, no, we shouldn't protect a business owner's right to do what they want to do. I'm not saying that we shouldn't propose bills. No, again, part of the discourse, that's part of the country that we're in, that's part of why I believe in the system of democracy, of republic democracy that we currently have. But here's the problem. That impassioned speech, that cry out to his colleagues to protect America, it was show. It was all for show. What you didn't see is that there's nobody in that chamber. That chamber is completely empty. The only people that are in that chamber are the people behind him and the camera people. In other words, he was doing this just so that he could have something to bring back to his constituency and say, see, I spoke out against this even if I didn't vote for the bill. This is something that is poisoning the electorate system, because if we have people who are more concerned about showman points than about actual policy, than about actually doing something in compromise, well, we get crappy laws. Now, I know there's some of you who are saying, wait a minute, but Padre, what do you mean there's nobody there? How do you know that? Well, take a look at this next clip and it might explain.
Millions of illegal aliens in this country right now impose a huge burden on America's cities.
Be for your greater glory and honor. Amen.
So what we have, what I was able to see in the time that I was acting as the chaplain of the House, was every time I would go up there, there was a lot of pomp and circumstance. There was a lot of dignitary restrictions that went on. I mean, there was something that followed my plan each and every single time you went up. And after the prayer, they had a moment, a section of time that was dedicated to any representative who wanted to come up and give their 60 seconds. Now, here's the crazy thing. I could have continued that clip because there are representatives who come up to wish someone a happy birthday because they know they can send the C-SPAN clip to someone and say, see, I got your birthday entered into the congressional record. There are people who come up to talk about bills that have absolutely no chance of passing because it was a bill that one of their supporters wanted, maybe someone who contributed to their congressional campaign. My personal favorite is when you get someone who is pounding on the podium, is yelling, has spittle flying out from his mouth, and he's speaking to an empty chamber. Folks, I think we deserve more than just theater. I think we deserve more than just those empty seats. I think we deserve more than just pandering to the people who you think are going to get you elected. Now, I'm not going to say there's a simple solution. I'm not going to say, oh, we should all just vote Democrat. We should all vote Libertarian. We should all vote Independent. No. What I'm saying is if we want this to end, it starts with us. We like to rally against our representatives, but we're the ones who send those men and women into office. We're the ones who vote for them or don't vote for them. We're the ones who show our pleasure or our displeasure with things that they propose. And so if we want to change the system, well, boys and girls, it's got to start right here. Now, speaking of starting right here, I'm thinking that maybe it's time to introduce the guest for Padre's Corner. You don't know this man yet, but I think you're going to like him. He's one of my Jesuit brothers. His name is Eric Sundrup. Eric, can you say hello to the good boys and girls of Padre's Corner?
Hello, everybody. How you doing?
Yeah. Now, Eric, maybe people need to know a little bit more about why you're here and where you come from. We're both Jesuits, right? I mean, last time I checked, we both have SJ after our name.
We do, in fact. And I have not been dismissed as of today. I'm assuming you're still in good standing?
Yeah, that's just
too long of a pause.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to think about it. I'll get back to you on that. Let me tweet you. Now, just recently, you were ordained to the diaconate. That's why, if you look at your title, it's actually Reverend Mr. Eric Sundrup. And
Reverend Mr.
People
right.
always wonder, wait, I know Reverend. What's Reverend Mr.? I don't understand that. Can you explain to the folks what that is?
Sure. So Roman Catholic, in that system, I am in a stage called a transitional diaconate. So I am preparing for ordination to the priesthood, and for about a year, 8 months before I become a priest, I am a transitional deacon. So I help serve at the Catholic liturgies in the role of a deacon. So I get the Reverend Mister instead of Reverend Father. I just get Reverend Mister because I'm not yet ordained as a priest, but I am serving some liturgical roles. One of the big ones that people notice is I get to preach a homily and read the gospel. And then my big line during the Mass is, let us share with each other a sign of that peace.
No, 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 wait. Coming up, we've got an Easter Vigil. What's the big line that you have at the end?
Yeah, this will be my first Easter Vigil. I have to review the book. I have, I don't know what that is. Do you know?
Remember the whole go in peace, the sending forth? That actually belongs to the deacon.
Yeah, go in peace, hallelujah. Thanks be to God.
Remember,
hallelujah.
you have to sing it, right?
That's right. Yeah, I'm going to have to practice. Well, technically, I'd have to sing the Exultet, too.
Are you going to do it in Latin?
I don't know. I'd have to look at that. Luckily, a lot of times the music ministers take that over because a lot of us are tone deaf, and the people of God do not deserve that horrible, horrible experience.
That's actually that's a good thing. Thank you for bringing that back. Now, I didn't just bring you here because well, we're fellow Jesuits. I brought you here because you've been involved in, I'm going to call it's a very interesting experiment on the internet. Do you want to talk a little bit, tell the folks what the Jesuit Post is?
Sure. The Jesuit Post is basically an experiment by young Jesuits. So when I use the term young Jesuits, I'm basically referring to Jesuits in formation. Jesuit formation is about a decade long. And so you get guys that when they enter when they're 22, like I did, then it could be 32 by the time they finish formation, 33. You also have guys that enter in their 30s and 40s. But generally, it's Jesuits that are beginning their formation and learning what it is to be a Jesuit. And what we wanted to do is provide a space for those Jesuits to talk to their friends. Now, the model for this is being drawn out of something deeply Ignatian. So it's from the Jesuit tradition. It's something called the spiritual exercises, which is this big setup about how to pray and use your imagination as a Jesuit and use that in prayer. And there's a phrase in there we took out of that. It's called speak as one friend speaks to another. We thought too many conversations on the internet about the intersection of faith and culture were basically like shouting matches and people not hearing each other. And they were talking in terms and using terminology that just didn't make sense to people. So we wanted to provide a site where young Jesuits speak to the internet and their friends as one friend speaks to another, using terminology, using references, and pulling in links from things that are going on. So how you would talk to your friends, and that's what the Jesuit Post is. Yeah. It's got podcasts, it's got videos, it's got articles, it's got all sorts of stuff, and it's about 40 young Jesuits.
Now, one of the things that we were actually talking about when you were first proposing this idea, when was it, like 2 years ago, I think?
I've been proposing this. We've been proposing this idea for 7 years, but we finally got it off the ground about 3 years ago.
And yeah, I will admit that our organization, the Society of Jesus, has. It seems a little bit slow. I mean, I've actually been campaigning for something like this since 1994, I believe, is when I started.
Jeez, Padre, I was still in grade school.
Hey, I will kick your Skype right off this stream, mister. No, but seriously, one of the things that we've run into over the years is we've got great superiors who understand what we're trying to do, but then we've also got people who, and I live with a few of these, I'm sure you live with a few of them, who say, wait a minute, well, what is this? Why would we want to be on the internet? I don't understand this internet thing. And I think the Jesuit Post goes a long way to fixing that, right? I mean, the Jesuit Post is a nice look at what you can do, how you can merge some of the older and the newer traditions into something that's actually understandable by people who maybe aren't people of faith.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it follows a very old model for the Jesuits. We'd use the term enculturation. When you're dealing with the internet, you need to enculturate. You need to speak the language, talk in the way, make the references the people on the internet make. And the Jesuit Post is simply going to do that. It's like learning a new language and speaking in a new culture. So that's something we wanted to do. And I think what's really important is you are using people who have grown up with this. So you're using 20 and 30-year-old Jesuits who this is nothing new or strange to them. This is very normal to them. This is how they communicate with their friends. We want to provide that space for that to happen. One of the things it's done is it's triggered a lot of questions institutionally in the Society of Jesus, which is causing us to ask some really good questions and shift around some of our communication patterns and the way we think about what we're doing. And I think that's a really good thing. And those superiors, some of them who are frightened by, anything technological, are starting to ask some really good questions and coming to us, and we're encouraging them to do stuff. I've had a lot of meetings with superiors where I explain what the men that they're in charge of are doing and why it's important and how it's effective. And I think that changes the tenor of the conversation. It's a great thing. For us, it's also a fun experiment to try new stuff. We just try and do new things. I mean, there's some stuff up on our YouTube channel called Ask Iggy, which is ridiculous. I mean, it's hilarious. I love doing it, but I'm not a trained actor. I'm not a trained actor. It's so much. I get so much grief. YouTube, commenters, man, nasty pool, but it's fun.
Yeah, but I mean, hey, you know what? Actually, I think I'd put our chat room against YouTubers any day, but that's just me. Now, okay, let's rotate a little bit, because I don't want this to become Padre's evangelical hour. I mean, yeah, we're both Jesuits. Well, I love the fact that I can have you on, that you're involved in new media, but we brought you here to talk about a couple of stories. You feel like discussing some interesting stories from around the world with me?
Absolutely. I spend a lot of time surfing the net.
Good. So this first story is, well, I'm sorry, Muslims. No Mars for you. That's right. The Mars One project asked for volunteers to send on a one-way mission to the Red Planet by 2024, with a second group a few years after that. Now, the idea was simple, and that was most of the technical issues about sending a mission to Mars revolve around the fact that we don't have a way to return someone from Mars. We can send probes to Mars. We can send spacecraft to Mars. But the second we try to get something back, well, it doesn't work out so well. So the Mars One project tried to say, well, how about this? If you feel like going to Mars, you don't mind being a colonist, you don't mind it being a one-way trip, we'll put you on the short list. We'll go through a pool of applicants. They were hoping to get a couple of hundred that they could screen through, find the talents that they needed, and send that mission by 2024. Well, they ended up getting thousands upon thousands upon thousands of applications, and now the Committee of the General Authority of Islamic Affairs and Endowment in the United Arab Emirates, that's a long name for committee, have issued a fatwa, basically a directive saying if you're Muslim, if you believe in Islam, well, you can't go. Now, they're not specifically saying, no, you can't go to Mars. Islam's not going to let you go to Mars. What they're saying is that a trip to Mars, because of all the technical difficulties, because it would be a one-way trip, and because there's a very high probability that you're not going to survive the trip for very long, is tantamount to suicide. So they're not strictly forbidding travel to Mars, but they're saying that as the trip would be that one-way, almost certain to die on the Red Planet, that you can't go. That's the fatwa. That's what they're saying. That's what they're saying. I'm sorry, but no Mars for you. Now, Eric, let me bring this over to you, because we could talk about religions all day, and I don't want to start messing up with anyone's religion, saying this one's better, that one's crazy, et cetera, but there's something about this that strikes me as just not right. I mean, all religions have sent people out into dangerous places before, knowing full well that they're probably not going to return, knowing full well that it's a dangerous mission. What makes this so different? And why do you think this group decided to issue this fatwa now? It didn't seem like it's something they had to do.
You got me. I'm not an expert in the sort of the structures of authority in the Muslim world. I think what's very interesting, and probably what you're talking about, what you're feeling, is we've got a tradition where we've grown up with where there's a really important part of your conscience, right? It's to let the individual take all in the information and make a decision based on their conscience. And this seems like one that's kind of going against that. Like, this is the decision that the individuals might want to make, understanding what's going on, understanding the technology, understanding what's going forward, and inform their conscience properly with the teachings of their religion, and then make the decision there. To me, that's the first issue that shows up here. If I was talking to someone from a Catholic perspective on this, I would say, well, I guess you kind of got to go with your conscience on this. I mean, I'm not going to be signing up for the first couple missions to Mars, but
I'll totally go. Actually, Topaz420 in the chat room, I told you about our chat room, said, yeah, Muslims aren't allowed to go to Mexico for the same reason.
A lot of good friends in Mexico.
Oh, my God. But again, it's not a religion thing. And some people in the chat room are pointing out, well, all great religions, I mean, all the big religions, Catholicism, Judaism, they have a thing about suicide. But I don't think you'd ever get a relevant Catholic authority saying, yeah, you can't travel to another world, you can't go into space because it's tantamount to suicide. That's just, they wouldn't say that.
I would be shocked, and I think it would immediately be seen as something that it would be a teaching or a pronouncement that no one has to listen to.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of things we don't have answers to, so that's totally fine. I remember, I think it was Guy Consolmagno or somebody they were asking him about aliens. If aliens came to Earth, what would you do? And he said, what would you baptize the aliens? And he said, if they asked me to, sure, why not? They have to ask.
That's not my thing. And actually, we do have a Muslim scholar, an Islam scholar, that I called up about this, and he kind of laughed and he said, well, I don't want to say anything bad about this committee, but this committee has been looking for something big that they could issue a fatwa about for a while, and so they just found it in Mars.
They found this in Mars? Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
you got to do a ton of research before you can say this is tantamount to suicide. You really need to know the tech. And most religious people that I know haven't spent a ton of time in, investing in rocket science research.
Let me just say this: if they are really against anything that would be tantamount to suicide, I'm pretty sure that they should be issuing a fatwa against eating at McDonald's, because right?
It's a slow death. It's a slow death.
It's a slow and painful death. All right, let's move on, because I don't want to bash Islam. It's really not an Islam thing. It seems to be more of some people who wanted attention, and they were kind of sad that people weren't paying attention to them. So let's move on. Now, Eric.
Yep.
Did you know that there's another gold rush on?
Another one?
There's another one, yeah.
Oh, out here in the Bay Area, or where out?
A little south. Go a little south. What do you think?
Like how far south? Like San Diego?
San Diego, a little further south.
Mexico, Guadalajara.
Keep going.
Keep going. La Paz.
Okay, let me give it to you. It's down in the Antarctic. Now, you got to get some of the history here. Actually, the history here is fascinating. When we start talking about the Antarctic, we know that there's a lot of resources buried in the Antarctic, but nation states haven't made a rush to go get them. And the reason why they haven't is because they agreed not to. The Antarctic Treaty was signed into force back in June 23rd, 1961. Now, in that treaty, 12 countries came together, including Argentina, Australia, Belgium, Chile, France, Japan, New Zealand, Norway, South America, the USSR, the UK, and the United States, and they agreed that the Antarctic would only be used for scientific exploration. Of course, back then, they really didn't know what was there, so of course scientific exploration sounded like a great thing. Now, the treaty had 12 articles that, among other things, first, forbade any military activity, although they allowed you to use military forces because, let's be realistic, the only things that can get down there are military equipment, military cargo planes, military ships. They also prohibited nuclear explosions or dumping of radioactive waste, which
Low bar, boys. Low bar.
Exactly. It's okay. So as long as you don't irradiate us, and as long as you don't militarize the thing, it's okay. Yeah,
oh boy,
that's good. Okay. Now, they also prevented the recognition or rejection of any territory claims. This is a big one. They said, we're not allowing anyone to claim territory in the Antarctic, but at the same time, we're not going to definitively reject any claims of territory. So what we've seen over the years is that now that there are 50 members of this treaty and about 85 countries who actually have a presence down there, we have a ton of quote-unquote research centers that have developed around the Arctic Circle from these different countries. We've now found that the Antarctic has a ton of resources. They have the third largest oil reserves. They have coal, they have iron, they have manganese, they have fish. They have 90% of the Earth's fresh water. Now, the story that we brought up is about China building a brand new research center, but other nations have had their eye on the region as well. Argentina has 13 stations, Chile and Russia have 12 stations each, Australia has 7, the US and the UK have 6, Germany, Italy, Japan have 5, China has 3. There are a total of 27 other stations from other countries. Now, I could geek out about the technology of these stations because I don't know about you, but for the longest time, I've had this sort of desire. I've wanted to go down and be a chaplain at one of the research stations, but it never worked out. But I want to get your input on what you think this gold rush might be, because the treaty is about to run out. And once that treaty runs out, all these countries who have stations down there are going to claim that this territory is now ours. We've got something on this ice. Boom, it's automatically ours. Boom, we can automatically start extracting resources from the land.
I'm sure they know what's there. I'm sure they have a sense that there's something there, and they'll do a land grab as soon as they can. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I have a buddy. His brother works at one of the research stations down there, and he sends back some hilarious videos. And the tech they have down there is great. But I think for a long time we didn't have the tech to make that a place that a lot of people wanted to be. But with communications the way it is now, I think it's a little less lonely than it used to. So I think you can get more and more people down there, and they're probably experimenting and looking for some more stuff. But I don't have a ton of faith in them telling us the total truth about what's going on in Antarctica. Maybe they found aliens, or aren't the Transformers buried down there somewhere? I can't remember which.
Wasn't that X-Files? Oh, no. Stargate. There's a big Stargate there.
There's a Stargate in there?
That's a Stargate.
Oh, then we don't need to go to Mars. You can just hop through the Stargate, start sending, the people through there. It's not complete suicide, right?
Yeah, the chair that leads back to the Pegasus Galaxy. It's all good. It's all good. Now, there is something else here, and this is why I like having a Jesuit to talk about this story. When we talk about things like this, about the Antarctic, about a land grab that's coming up in the very near future, this is going to be the cutting edge of politics because it's all about the resources. We see this in Asia right now where there's a land grab over the Spratlys and over part of the South China Seas, where they've realized how many resources are buried under this rocky ground that's pretty much uninhabitable. If you've got these countries who are going to be starved for resources, I mean, specifically looking for energy and for raw materials to build, the Antarctic is prime real estate. It's the front row seat to the next land grab. And I'm wondering, well, what would your expectations be? I mean, I know you just said, the countries probably know what's down there, but it seems like maybe we should have a bit more of a head start in actually negotiating treaties between countries so it doesn't become a shooting war.
I think, well, in general, transparency would be the ideal. I don't expect to get transparency. I live in the United States. I'm assuming they're keeping track of everything I do and not telling me about it, which is fine. I've kind of expected that at this point. But I think being honest with what's going on down there, which I don't have a ton of faith that the political system is going to allow for that, would be the way to start with it. But that requires a radical shift in the way we think about the world. And it's not countries' interests against each other, but it's humanity as one unit. And how can we best work for the good of humanity? But that is, I mean, I sound like a what do you call it, a college kid right home for the first Christmas break. Like, it's going to be great. We're going to figure everything out. No problem. I got all these principles. It'll work fine. I think demanding and putting pressure on our own governments to tell us the truth and to really talk about what's going on there as this starts to kick in, I think that'll be really, really important. And that's something that we'll have to do from, the system that we're within. China, Russia, those are different places. They have different systems. We've seen how things are going in different places like that. So it's a lot more complicated. But, hopefully with a lot of players in there, you can get a little more transparency than if you just had one dominant system. And I think that's why everybody's staking their claim and putting a lot of research centers in there. They want to have something to say, and they want to have people on the ground.
Again, our chat room strikes again. We've got Dale Poco who says, look, a few thousand years from now, and with global warming, that place will be paradise. We've got Topaz420 who says, hey, it's a prelude to what will happen on Mars, which actually, that's actually a nice way to look at it.
With the global warming, I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, and that was like a nice shallow ocean. So I'm waiting for that, like my parents' house to become, beachfront property. So if I'm around long enough, maybe that'll work out. I mean, otherwise it's just the Midwest. My God, may the Midwest forgive me for what I just said. I live in California now. I'll get over it. I'm being banished to Michigan after this. So,
all right, we better move on to the next story before we get in trouble. By the way, we're getting in trouble in a lot of these stories. So, I want to talk to you about something that both of us have a little bit of experience with, because this was really on display down in Rio de Janeiro, where we both were missioned for the last summer for World Youth Day, and that is how there are more and more media groups and media-savvy people who are realizing that, well, Pope Francis is kind of a social media guru, right? I mean, he's been hitting all the right steps. Pope Francis right now is the most followed, most favorited, and most retweeted world leader on the internet. Now, people who have listened to him have noticed a few things. One, that he doesn't couch his talks in heavy theology. He has a radical simplicity about him. That's actually one of my favorite quotes, that he likes to make people understand, versus some other leaders who have used a lot of theology and a lot of big words to just kind of confuse people and make them feel, well, I guess they know best. He also tends to go off script. Now, we really saw that in Rio, where he was getting away from his media handlers, and he was sort of relying on his gut to do things that the people loved and his handlers hated. Do you remember that moment in Rio where someone tried to hand him a baby. And the people in the back of the Pope mobile, which was not enclosed, were like, "Oh no, you can't. No, Pope doesn't do that." And he just reached out and he grabbed the baby, and then he gave away his zucchetta. I mean, it was one of these crazy moments where you're like, "What is he doing?" I mean, this is not what he expected.
He was breaking rules all the time. We were at the press conferences, and I was talking to a couple of his security detail people. And you know, these are people that are young and can handle this. I mean, the Pope's in his 70s, and they said, we needed this to end. If we're here for a couple more days, we're all going to die of exhaustion. And he just keeps going and going. And they can't, and they just couldn't anticipate him. And I mean, I found that hilarious. I wasn't in charge of keeping the man safe, so thank God that wasn't my job. But those people look like they were gaining quite a few extra gray hairs. He's not containable. He's not going to be. I mean, I would give up if I was in charge of trying to contain him. It wouldn't be worth it.
Do you remember that moment that happened towards the beginning of his visit where they took the wrong turn? The motorcade took the wrong turn. And there was, I mean, right now.
It went down the wrong street in Rio. It got stuck behind all the buses. I mean, it was the CNN footage. So we were watching different feeds. We're watching CNN, like BBC, and then we're watching the local Brazilian feed. And like the Brazilian feed, which I don't speak Portuguese really, we had a Brazilian Jesuit kind of translating stuff. There's like, they shouldn't be in this area. The buses are going to get trapped here. This is crazy. And we were calling it the Pope NATO because it was like, you know, he got trapped. We didn't know what was going on.
This was right after Sharknado. Remember Sharknado?
Yeah, it was right after Sharknado. It looked really bad from the helicopter views, but people on the ground said it wasn't that frightening because the crowd was really happy, and it was an exciting crowd, and it looked like a you know, it looked like something out of The Walking Dead. From the helicopter views, with all these crowds pressing in on him. So
I remember us sitting there because we were kind of excited. I mean, we were there to cover it. I mean, we had been in country for, at that point, was that our 4th or our 5th week? That might have been our 5th week in country. We were really, really tired, and so we're huddled in this office. We have horrible internet access. We're trying to stream it, and we're like, oh, the Pope's here, and so we're all gathered. And then we see it make the wrong turn and go into this traffic, and for a second, we're all disbelieving. And I remember you turned to me, and you're like, Brazil.
That was our refrain. It's Brazil.
It's Brazil. That's what happened. Okay, no, let me ask you this. Yeah, he tends to be media savvy. He's a Jesuit, so we know the kind of training that he went through. We understand that he's a bit more on the discernment side. He understands being a contemplative in action. But what is it that seems to make him so popular? There are people in the chat room who are saying, oh, he's a good guy. But just being a good guy doesn't make you that popular. What do you think is his secret sauce?
I think you've got basically, and it's funny to me because when I started a project with the Jesuits to speak to people as they're used to hearing, you know, as one friend speaks to another. I think you now have a Pope that speaks a language and a style that people can understand and that translates well in the media. And so you're getting that effect. Benedict was an academic guy, brilliant man, said very similar things, but he said them in academic ways, and people just sometimes didn't understand what he was saying. This guy speaks in a way that people can catch on pretty quickly. And so I think that's translating quite well. I think also there's an unsung hero. I don't even actually know the guy's name, which means he's doing his job really well. But the Vatican hired a new media person just before Francis got in. He was a former Fox News executive of some sort. And the fact that this stuff is going, I mean, somebody's pushing this stuff around in the background and knows some channels to open up. And if he's doing his job well, then they're never going to realize it's him. But I think this guy's going to deserve some credit. I'd have to do some quick research to figure out who it was. I read a couple articles on him a couple months back, but I think there's multiple things going on there.
Now let's be really, really honest. Let's get down to brass tacks, because I don't want people to watch this show and think, oh, this is just a Jesuit/Catholic love fest. He is still a pope who is presiding over a church that horribly mismanaged the sexual abuse scandal. I mean, just from top to bottom, it was. I mean, you can make all the excuses that you want, but in the end, it was a bad time of the church, and it's not over yet. I mean, we see the light, but it's still hovering over us. And it's a church that's heading into a new set of scandals, the financial scandals. In fact, Pope Francis has met it head on. He's been clearing house at the Vatican Bank. He's been demanding bishops have better accounting of their finances in their diocese, and he's been demanding that we become a church of the poor. In that light, there are some people who are wondering how long he can keep this honeymoon up. I mean, he seems like a good guy right now, but people are saying at some point he's going to have to make some really, really hard decisions. And those hard decisions are going to make him unpopular one way or another. Do you see that, or do you think that this is one of those things where his popularity is so great, his simplicity is so marvelous, that he could actually do the things that a lot of other pontiffs couldn't get away with?
I think he's got some leeway that other pontiffs didn't have. That's pretty standard. I think you got to be clear. The man's not God. He's not Jesus. So he's not perfect. He's going to make some errors that are going to anger people. He's already angered certain groups in the Catholic Church. So he's not universally loved. John Allen had a really great piece. John Allen writes for the Boston Globe now about he's taken over some stuff with the Legionnaires. And so what happens here on out with the Legionnaires is going to be on him. So that's another, John Allen was basically calling this his first test. So what happens with the Legionnaires is kind of going to be on him. It's not going to, you can't pin it to Benedict or JP2. You're going to have to pin it to him. So yeah, I mean, standard thing as things go on and he's making his mark, then when things don't work or people are unhappy, then it's going to be more place blame on him. I expect it to happen. That's kind of human nature. I think he's come along at a special time, and he's reacting in a way that I think is very effective. I also think you have a church that is not so centric on Europe, and you've got a pope from South America, and that's a big deal. Catholicism is global, and this guy comes from South America, and that changes the tenor and the way he sees the world. There's a great article. I'm totally shamelessly plugging the Jesuit Post. I did not write this article. There's a great article by a guy named Jeremy Zippel about what's changing in Catholicism and why Benedict takes look what I did. Why Francis takes some of the angles he does, and American commentators tend to frame it in Western ideology. And Jeremy is called Global Catholicism, why it's changing, why the change is different than you think. And he argues that he simply doesn't have those ideological categories, this idea that he's bridging the left and the right, the way we see the world and the way the sort of a Western post-Enlightenment setup has set up our political discourse, that Francis doesn't see that. And so you're going to see some shifts. And we're trying to fit him into our categories, and he's not from our categories because he grew up in Argentina. So it's a very different setup.
Yeah. I like that. Actually, I was trying to find the article, but I'll have to find it later on. Now, something else that I'm hoping to get a little bit of your feedback on is this.
On the chat room, they're saying Argentina is like Europe. Buenos Aires is definitely like Europe, but the whole country itself, that shifts.
Yeah. It's like saying, Bolivia is like Europe. Well, yeah, parts of Bolivia. If you go to Sucre, it's got a lot of the European feel. If you go to La Paz, it's got a lot of the European feel. But head out of those cities and you really lose that. Colonial times.
Real fast.
Like within a kilometer. Now, okay, one last bit, because I think this ties into the work that both of us do. There's been a notion that one of the things that makes Francis so popular, that one of the things that people have really liked about him is that he has been breaking down the notions of what a pope can and cannot do. And he's been pushing up against those barriers time and time again. We saw it with the comments that he made on the plane when he said, "Who am I to judge?" We saw it when he did the washing of the feet for prisoners when his own people were saying, "No, the Pope doesn't do that." We've been seeing that in a lot of his public statements. My question is, that's actually the secret sauce that I've been using. And that's what I've been using here on Twitter. I don't know if that's what you've been using on the Jesuit Post. But anytime you can show that the preconceived notions about X, and this could be anything, this doesn't have to be Catholicism, this could be anything in social media, that's when you tend to get the best reaction. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think one of the basic tenets of the gospel, this is a quote from, I think it's Richard Rohr. If it's not changing you, it's not the truth. If it's not challenging you and moving you to a new space and a new way of thinking and a depth and profundity that you haven't experienced before, then that's not the good news. And then you're talking about something else. So when that's part of the message, I think then that's going to start blowing apart people's categories and preconceived notions. And half the stuff I do when I show up at a parish and they don't know who I am, and I give a homily or I talk about something, and I'm capable of using words like in the chat room they're asking if the Pope twerks. So when I show recognition of what twerking is, half the parish is shocked that I would have that type of knowledge. And so you're just letting people understand that, and this is a sort of a very Jesuit way of looking at the world. We see the world as imbued with God's work. So we're going to go into almost everything and look for where God is in those things. And you're seeing that with this Pope. He's Jesuit trained. He's a Jesuit. So that's going to change the style of the way he does things. And he's going to blow apart a lot of preconceived notions, and he's going to say stuff you don't expect. He's going to ask us to be places that people aren't used to the Pope saying we need to be.
Okay, now I will point out that the people in the chat room are only asking you if the Pope twerks because they know that I do. They actually have they have footage.
These are things I never need to know. Thank you for sharing that. But
if we waited around long enough, someone in the chat room would actually give you the YouTube link to me twerking.
Oh wow! Actually, in the chat room, put that YouTube link up so I get that. I'll need that at various conferences throughout the year. It'll be helpful for me.
No, actually, I'm going to be a lot of those conferences. Please don't do that. All right, let's move past this. Let's get on to something else. This is a story that you suggested, so I want to let you drive this. Now, there's a movie that was released just a while ago called Her. It was a phenomenal premise. The idea was that our personal assistants like Siri or what's the Google one? The Microsoft's is called Cortana. These virtual assistants had grown to the point where their AI could actually feel. It could actually grow. It could actually emote. Now, the story of the movie was that one of these people who grows a little too attached to his personal assistant, and well, then I don't want to have any spoilers. It has a nice, interesting ending. Now, Eric, this was written about on the Jesuit Post. Tell me a little bit about why you were so enamored with this story.
I had asked Matt to do this. So the guy that wrote this is Matt Dunch. He teaches philosophy at Xavier University in Cincinnati. He is a younger Jesuit who's very interested in neuroscience, philosophy of mind, and artificial intelligence. He is 600 billion times more brilliant than I am. He's a great guy. And I'd asked him to look at that movie and give me some feedback on what he thought was going on there, because I found the movie very moving. It's sort of well done movie, the scenery, everything. I was kind of drawn into it. I really enjoyed it. And I thought it asked some really interesting questions that people in my generation are asking about, what it means to be human, what love means, how that affects our lives, what embodiment means, the concept of having a body. We get a lot of talk about rationality. That's a big thing in Western thought. What does it mean to have a body with emotions, and how does that affect how we interact with the world? And so I asked Matt to kind of just look closely a little bit at these things, and then kind of generate people thinking about stuff, because the movie basically talks about falling. I mean, it is the first time I have seen a sex scene that doesn't involve two bodies. I think it was a disembodied what was her name, Samantha, and then the other guy. Yeah. It's not a huge spoiler.
I don't think we're supposed to spoil it like that. I think that's one of those surprises that you need to keep in the movie. All right, now, okay, but let's break it down a bit more serious than that, because yeah, it's an interesting premise. It's an interesting movie, but there are a lot of people, some very purported psychologists who are saying, wait a minute. This new generation of electronics, of consumer electronics, they've changed the way that we interact. And in fact, the internet has changed the way that we interact with people. And we're now used to interacting with people through the filter of an electronic device, be it the computer, your phone, your tablet, whatever it is. So it's not actually that far off to expect people to make the jump to interacting through an electronic device with something that's not actually a person, not a human being on the other end. I think that's the part of the movie, that's the premise of the movie that is most interesting to me, that it's capitalizing on this idea that I think even those of us who are most involved in electronics, who most love our electronics, have finally come to the point where we realize, yeah, there's something different, right? I mean, I don't want to be the old fogey here, but there's something different about the way that I'm interacting now versus the way I interacted back in the 90s.
Yeah, there's been changes, I think, but one of the things, the big point is, no matter what tools you're using, right? No matter what devices we're using, you're still an embodied person, and so that is the primary place you interact out of. Whether you got a screen in front of you or not, you're still embodied. We've all our experience is through embodiment. And Matt was making that point that is a very interesting concept that needs to be paid attention to when we have these discussions about what it's going to be like to interact with robots or AI that are disembodied existences. And so it's a very interesting place to start thinking about that.
Yeah, yeah. We've got Milk the Rhino in the chat room who's actually echoing my sentiment. He's saying, but wait a minute, yeah, we see this, but is that a good thing? And I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. I say it's a different thing, but it's something that we actually have to acknowledge. We have to say, yes, that this is different, and it's different than being in a relationship with something that's embodied. Again, I want to be the old fogey. I don't want to say, kids are playing with their video games. No, but there is something that I think that we need to pay attention to. Now, Matt's big line there is to love a human is to love a body. And that's a striking phrase. And I think it bears some reflection.
when we say that, is do we mean that? Well, how does that play out in our mind? It's a very interesting idea, and I have found myself reflecting on that. Like, to love a human is to love a body. So to love Samantha, was that different? Is that a new category? What are we going to do with that? It's an interesting concept.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to move on because we're running out of time, and I thought maybe it might be time for the tech. Now, the really good geeks in the chat room will be able to tell me what speed that modem negotiated to. Hint, it's not top speed. It's not 58.6. Now, Eric, have you heard about crypto mining?
I probably should have read that, right?
No.
Yes, I have.
No, honest question. Have you heard about crypto mining? Say no if you haven't.
I've heard the phrase. I have no real sense of what you're talking about.
All right. So when we're talking about crypto mining, we're talking about using the power of your CPU or your GPU or a dedicated ASIC, a dedicated piece of silicon, to break cryptographic hashes in order to unlock a blockchain, which will reward you with virtual currency. So this is what we were talking about when we're talking about Bitcoin or Dogecoin, Litecoin, right?
Yeah, you put all those CPU cycles into it so you can mine for the
Yeah. But what we've seen is that the CPU is actually not all that powerful when we're trying to unlock cryptocurrency. Even Bitcoin, which still does use a lot of CPU power, is much more efficiently unlocked by a GPU. That's the graphics processor, right? So the graphics part, the thing in your graphics card. And so what some interesting geeks have done over the last 2 or so years is they've built hashing rigs. So these are computers that are specifically built just to do hashing. And what they'll do is they'll load up a couple of high-end video cards in order to get as much hashing power as they can out of that small footprint. Well, there's a little company that decided this won't do. We want a bit more style. We want more than just a bunch of video cards stacked up in a milk crate. So they made this. This thing is called the Dopa Mine. Get it? Dopamine, dopamine. Yeah.
Somebody studied biology as an undergrad.
Now, the cool thing about this is it's a 6 GPU case that is designed for people who are going to use it for mining or for graphics-intensive software, in other words, gaming. Now, it's better than a cobbled-together setup. This is actually a Kickstarter. This is something that they put together. They want to get a bunch of backers. They're selling these cases for about $230 per at the moment, and they're trying to attract the PC enthusiast, someone who wants to make a mining rig but doesn't want that really kind of ghetto cables everywhere kind of nasty thing look. Now, would you consider putting something like this in your room? Be honest with me. If someone came up to you and said, "Hey, Eric, I got this for free." You know, I got a vow of
poverty, right? I can barely keep track of the tech I need.
Yeah, I know. Neither of us have a really big budget, so this would have to be something for free. But if someone came up to you and said, "Hey, I'm going to give you one of these, and I want you to put it next to your computer, and you're going to be able to mine currency with it," would you do it?
I rarely turn down free tech. 1, 2, I don't need a heating bill at that point, probably. So that's another nice side effect of that. Yeah. It's a little sleek looking. I mean, you should see my room. It's full of cables and everything. So this is the type of thing I'd have in my room. I wouldn't put it out in the community room. It would scare people. They'd think I was, I don't know, building the hive mind.
Well, I think the people in the community room would do something with it. I had a really bad story from living in that very community that you're living in right now. I had a rig that I had been working on for the longest time, and unfortunately someone said, "This doesn't look like anything," and they tossed it out. And it was
you know, there's stuff in the chat room will probably love that. There is stuff in the house I live in now that still has Father Ballestier's a name on it.
Wait,
so there's all sorts of tech that says don't touch this. There's switches and stuff. It's all like
really?
90s tech. Yeah, I had to go through and explain to people like, yeah, we've bypassed this. You can take this out now. This doesn't work so well. Let's move that. That's where the bottleneck's occurring in the network. Let's move these things on.
Wait. I told them that tech should have been pulled out 10 years ago.
You drilled holes in walls here and installed fans or something. You must have had a rig up in one of the closets.
You're in Arupe, right?
I am in Arupe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. There's a little fan exhaust thing.
Oh, you're the second floor. You've got that back corner, right?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So I will admit that at some point
There's a ton of 90s tech people were frightened by.
I may have noticed that there was a cabinet hanging in there that wasn't really doing anything, and so I loaded it up with network equipment, and I had to put a couple of ventilation holes, and it wasn't very pretty, but it worked really well while we were there.
I don't doubt. We've now got different switches, and it's managed stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, that tech was old when I put it in because, again, like you, I didn't have a budget, so I was like scavenging stuff from the bottom of dumpsters in Silicon Valley.
Oh, that's how I used to set up all our houses. I know I'm running cable and stuff in the houses. Yeah. If you know anything about tech in a Jesuit community, they usually give you full reign because they look at you like it's like kind of magic. They just say, "Yes, make the things work for us so that we may do our jobs."
I will shamelessly admit that I have used that card more than once, where like I need to get a car on a Friday night. Like, well, what do you need a car for? One of the houses has a broken network. I have to go pick up a part.
The network thingy is broke. Oh, go do your magic incantations and make the internets come back.
The internet is all stuffed up in some of the cables, and I have to get some new cables so that I can unstuff it. And yeah, that's bad. Okay, no, that's a bad thing. I'm sorry. I should apologize for that.
But you digress.
However, I digress because I did want to show this thing off. Have you ever seen one of these, Eric? Anyone who's been watching my Enterprise show knows exactly what this thing is.
Like oh wow.
No,
I was gonna say a Roomba at first, but I'm gonna assume you got an access point of some sort.
This is an access point, but this is not just a standard access point. This thing actually has 24 radios in it. Each of them are separated off into. Well, you know what? Forget that. Why don't I just get a video that explains exactly what this thing does?
That might work.
I'm Father Robert Ballaser, the Digital Jesuit, host of Twiat, This Week in Enterprise Tech on the Twit Network. And this is another edition of Pro Gear. If you've watched Twiat, you probably know what this is, because this is my favoritist Wi-Fi device. This is a Xeris XR Wi-Fi array. The idea is simple. Rather than doing what most manufacturers are doing and designing an AP that spits out energy in all directions, this takes the 360 degrees around the array and divides it up into particular chunks, depending on how many radios you want. These radios are contained on these PCI Express cards that have these funny shaped RF reflectors on it. What this allows me to do is to put more radios into a smaller area without them interfering with one another. If you've ever done work with RF, you know that one of the biggest challenges is finding a way to get all the connectivity that you need without causing interference. Big problem indeed. The Xeris arrays solve that by, well, physically separating the radios and making it possible to reuse the same channels, reuse really close frequencies next to each other because they're not actually interacting with each RF azimuth band. Very cool tech, and with the combined controller that's built into the array, it means that this is a standalone device. I can go into the middle of a stadium, into the middle of a field, put one of these up on a pole, and instantly be supporting thousands of clients. Cool tech, but it had one major drawback. You see, this is a pricey piece of gear. I'm not saying that it's more expensive than gear from other manufacturers. In fact, if you compare it to how much it costs for traditional APs, this is actually incredibly competitively priced. But the problem was, with the smallest array being 4 radios, and with each radio going for about $650, you don't really want to spend upwards of $3,000 to serve out a room that might be in the back, maybe a conference room, a storage room, a small office that only has 1, 2, maybe 3 people. You needed something more cost-effective, and that's why Xeris released this. This smoke detector looking device is actually another array. This is their 520. They're calling it an AP because it's not directional, but rather it operates more like what you see on APs from the other manufacturers. Inside here, you see that it has 2 sets of radios. One is a combined 2.4 and 5 gigahertz radio. The other is a 5 gigahertz radio. The importance of that is that you can use one radio to bridge to another array, another 520 or say another XR, and then use that second radio to serve out Wi-Fi access. This makes it possible to do quick deployments and extend the reach of your Wi-Fi network. There are a few other really cool features about this. First, it's PoE, so you only have to run one cable. It has a reset button, so it acts more like a SOHO access point. And, this is my favorite, it uses the exact same OS
as the big arrays. That's right, if you've learned the operating system, the user interface for the XR series, you'll be right at home with the 520. It will allow you to use the same management software, the same management suite, the same management techniques, which means now you really can deploy this where you have a lot of users and then drop a 520 into that back closet. Now, I'm not sure the big question is going to be, how much does this cost? Well, here's the other sock knocker offer. I'm not sure if that's a phrase, but I just made it up. This is going to retail for about $599. That actually puts it below the traditional non-controller APs that you might buy from the other major manufacturers in the enterprise Wi-Fi gear field. Not only that, because it does have its own controller, it means it's just as standalone as one of the big XRs. Take this, put it into a Soho, and boom, you've got enterprise-class wireless, and it's good to go. Now, I am hopefully going to be able to take a look at one of the 520s in depth, actually show you how it performs, but if the XR series is any indication, this has become the new state-of-the-art in small Wi-Fi deployment. I'm Father Robert Ballecer. This is the XR, this is the 520, this is the Xeris Wi-Fi Playroom, and this has been Pro Gear.
Now, I realize that this is enterprise gear. Yeah, I mean, no one who has a home should be running out to get one of these things. But again, you know, my other show is This Week in Enterprise Tech, and I really love this sort of technology because it tends to trickle down into home units. And we're starting to see some of this. Some of the manufacturers have been looking at the tech from Xeris and trying to figure out how they could do that physical separation of RF bands so that they could cram more capacity into the same amount of space. It's just a bit of the tech that I like. Now, Eric, let me ask you, is there any tech that you've been playing around recently that you really like?
Geez. What am I playing around with lately? I'm doing a lot of outsourcing and looking for ways to monitor social media for the Jesuit Post. So not on hardware end, but a lot of services software stuff about social media monitoring, engagement, audience engagement, stuff like that.
I may actually have something for you that I'm going to be heading to the Enterprise Connect conference in Orlando in about 3 weeks. And that's all they do. Like they've every major company that does, I think they call it sentiment monitoring. So they can tell you not just how many times you've been mentioned, but was it a popular sentiment? Was it a negative sentiment? Was it a sentiment that would lead someone to want more? Or it's actually it's really nice. It's cool.
I've been looking at a bunch of different things. Am I allowed to mention names on this, or is that like
no? Go ahead.
Violate
rules?
Yeah, do it. Because I know the conference uses Vocus, which is kind of like the Cadillac. I'm also looking at a company named Meltwater. And I've been working with a company called Simply Measured. So we're comparing all their different platforms and looking at that different stuff. And I'm up for advice from anybody in the chat room or anybody that's listening ever. We're looking at different ways. You know, Jesuit Post is a scrappy organization with a low budget and not a ton of guys, but we need to find ways to be more effective in our monitoring and use of social media. And it's something that's going to trickle up for the entire Society of Jesus. You know, they'll be using it at the national level where you used to work.
I know. I used to work there until I got demoted. Actually, they fired me. I got kicked out. But I have a better job now.
There's no such thing as firing the Jesuits. It's just reassigning.
Exactly. That's the thing. There were a couple of times where I was like, wait a minute.
Resurrected in another spot.
What would it be like if I got fired? I haven't been fired like ever. What would happen? Getting fired in the Jesuits means you go on vacation until they find another place to put you. Yeah. Truth.
Just move you.
Now, Eric, I want to thank you so very much for coming on Padre's Corner. It was a pleasure to have you, and I hope to have you back at some point in the near future. In fact, we were planning on doing a podcast together for a while until things got really busy and things got political. But, you know, it's nice to be able to work with a fellow Jesuit who has an eye on the social media space. So for your time, do you want to tell our audience, do you want to tell those throngs of Twit Army folk where they can find you, what you've been working on, and what they should know about the, what do you call yourself? The Sunny Jesuit? Or, I can't remember.
Sunny DSJ is my, so Sunny D. DSJ, yeah. When I taught high school, so I did a lot of teaching in high schools. The students loved to give me nicknames. Sunny D was their favorite nickname. I've been called Sunny my whole life because of my last name. So I take all my Twitter handles and my IRC labels and all that stuff as Sunny D SJ, SJ for Society of Jesus. So you can find me on Twitter at Sunny D SJ. I tweet about random stuff, faith, culture, and tech and intersections and things I'm interested interested in. I would encourage everybody, if you want to check out the young Jesuits thinking about how faith and culture and pop culture and tech and all these things come together, the place that I'm the editor-in-chief is the Jesuit Post. That's the jesuitpost.org. You can find out a lot of information on there. You can also find my author page and see all the articles that I have written. Although I'm now an editor-in-chief, so I don't have time to write much. I just do a lot of editing and working with Jesuits. You can also check out the Jesuit Post on YouTube, YouTube.com/the Jesuit Post. And the Jesuit Post is on Twitter, of course, at the Jesuit Post. Those are the places where you can hear what we're thinking about and what's going on in our lives. And I love interacting with people. So if people want to send questions or emails or whatever, we're happy to go through it. We actually have a book coming out, and my article in that book is about how I love crazies, which would be the internet trolls and stuff. And not that I love dealing with them so much as they remind me so much of why the world is kind of fun and why we're all crazy a little bit. So
I like crazies too, but for a different reason. Dealing with internet trolls is one of the few ways that I get my aggression out. So
there's a great study about the personalities of internet trolls.
Oh yeah, I saw. Oh, that's great. And it's like, yeah, confirmation. Internet trolls really are crazy. they really are jerks.
There's nothing you can do about it. Let it go. I was telling all my friends, basically the summary of that entire article, it's this big scientific article, is trolls gonna troll, and that's you just got to do, and it's funny. But I mean, I love sending every now and then the banhammer on a couple internet trolls for the Jesuit Post, and I do my very best to engage them. And our rule is to engage at least once. And we can usually see crazy coming from a mile away, but we do an engagement if we can. And then if it's not going to work, it's not going to work. And I got friends to hang out with, and I don't need the trolls on my life.
See, we can also see crazy coming from a mile away, but we like to gather them all together in our chat room. It's easier when you know them. Actually, no, we have, I will say that we have the best mods on the internet. A lot of people get pissed about what they do because, yeah, they do kick people out a lot. But, you know this, a chat room can so easily degenerate into name calling and ad hominem attacks. Sometimes you just need someone who's going to say, no, we're just not going to have that.
No, because the chat room is supposed to be about interaction. And if someone's making it impossible to interact, I mean, that's the point. One of the things that happened to the Jesuit Post, we watched people talking about religion, and it was just basically, you are wrong, or there is no God, and just like a yelling match, right? And I was like, let's not have this yelling match. Let's in fact engage each other. And dialogue requires you to be civil and engage. And when people break down the conversation, it becomes difficult. Yeah, but we work with it. It's fun. You got to have a really good sense of humor. And you get used to stuff. But I love talking about faith and culture on the internet. That's something that gives a lot of Jesuits like cold sweats. But I think it's a great place to engage people, and I think it can be a lot of fun.
I will say that I have developed levels of trolldom. So I'm a troll. I know that. That's actually how I got this job at Twit. I was a troll in the chat room, and finally Leo said, "Hey, you want to do a show?" So I'm not the best. I'm not the best commercial for not trolling.
I've got trolls at the Jesuit Post who I've finally said, you know what, call me and let's talk about this. And like we engage in a Google Hangout or something like that. And they turn out to have great ideas, and you can engage people. And then I've also, one of my pastimes is the Jesuit conspiracy theories. God, do I love Jesuit conspiracy theories. They are so hilarious. What's her name? She used to stalk Brent Spiner.
Yeah. No, like
Melcourt Schuler or something.
No, I played one of her videos like in the first episode. I can't remember her name, but she did that, the Jesuit bukkake one. Did you?
Oh yes, giant bomb.
There's a nuclear bomb loaded with Jesuit sperm.
I put that on my Facebook page. All my friends were calling me. It's like, you have a perverted sense. It was just I was like, I can't make this stuff up. You were there. We were talking to the general of the Society of Jesus. So this is the head Jesuit. He's in charge of all the Jesuits in the world. And we were telling him stories about these YouTube videos, and he was cracking up. He hadn't seen some of these, and I'm told he actually later watched some of these, but he just thought they were hilarious. The one about the guys in North Korea, he's got a deadpan sense of humor, and he turns straight to me. He goes, "How many in North Korea?" And I said, "Well, they said there's like a million or so." He goes, "I need them now. Tell them to come to Rome."
No. I actually keep going, because I'm looking for the Jesuit bukkake right now.
Oh, the whole concept. Well, come on, people. My favorite is with Jesuits conspiracy theories, you get so much stuff because the Jesuits have been involved in education for so long. And I saw the illiterati comment, and then and the Illuminati. the founder of the Illuminati is in fact a Jesuit grad, so people pull in a lot of that stuff, and it's hilarious what people come up with. And I mean, my dad, sometimes he has some buddies that will give him these handouts about what the Jesuits doing that are horrible, and they hand into it at work. My dad saves them for when I'm home for Christmas, and we like share them over, you know, a drink at night, like talking about what's going on. It's
just
hilarious.
one second, because we have the special message.
Oh boy.
Yeah, hold on. Let me get this up here.
Semen in it that will infect.
Oh, we have
everyone.
to back
need
it up. Here
a
we go.
nuclear bomb that has semen in it that will infect everyone. We need our scientists all over the world to help us stop this bomb. And also, it's going to be like Jesuit bukkake and a nuclear bomb, and it's headed towards Canada, where Judge Terrence Jenkins is right now.
There are no words.
Out there,
there are simply no words.
I shouldn't laugh at mental illness, but I will.
Well, that's the thing. We were going to make some humorous videos about it, and we thought, you know what? It's just not fair. It's and she's got other great videos. My favorite is about she must have seen that movie with the guy that makes the robots. Wolverine, whoever the actor is that does that, where he's attacking Jesuits in North Korea, where we have a secret military base, and we have a special. It's a very complicated ray. It only works on non-born again Christians.
Right.
Which I think it's a very interesting technology. I would be intrigued to figure out how it like targets and focuses.
Actually, we're gonna have that on This Week in Enterprise Tech next week. But Eric, I got to call it a night. I got to say thank you very much for being on, and please check out the Jesuit Post. Check out his content. Check out what he does, because what he does is actually pretty spectacular. Again, that's Eric Sundrup. That's let me put his lower third up one more time. Oh, that's not him. That's me.
That's not me.
That's Eric Sundrup. He is Sunny DSJ on Twitter, and yeah, check out his content. Check out his YouTube page, and I promise you'll be impressed. Eric, thank you very much.
Padre, thanks for having me. It's been a blast, and thanks to all your followers in the chat room. I have really enjoyed this. I hope to come back someday.
Been a hoot. It's been a hoot. Now, I do want to say before I let you go that thank you for sticking around with me for an hour on a Friday. I know you could be out doing something else. In fact, there's no one else in the Twit Brick House. They've all found other things to do, but I enjoy my time with you. Now, I do want to say that we may be moving times. I'm not quite sure yet, but I think they want to free up Friday for some new alpha show. So I might be either moving to a Saturday or a Tuesday. Stay tuned. I'll put it out on the Twitter feed. Just remember, don't tell Lisa or Leo. Also, please join me for the shows that I actually do for the Twit TV network, because without you, we don't have an audience. If we don't have an audience, I don't have a reason to come to the Twit Brick House, and I love hanging out. You can find me on Mondays on This Week in Enterprise Tech at 2:30 p.m. Pacific time. We talk about enterprise technology, enterprise networks, and we have interesting guests who can tell you about the next step, the next iteration of the technology that drives communication around the world. Also, I do Know How on Thursdays at 12:30 Pacific time. On Know How, it's me and Brian Gumpel. That's Alex Gumpel. I'm sorry, that's Brian Burnett, the Cranky Hippo. We talk all about projects. We break down the knowledge so that you can build things out of your own geek imagination. It's a really cool time had by all. Right after Know How is Coding 101. I get together with Snubs, with Shannon Morse, and we give you some beginning lessons for entering the world of the Code Monkey. As always, you can find me here at twit.tv anytime I'm running on camera, and you can join us in our chat room at irc.twit.tv. Finally, make sure to follow me at Padre SJ. That's at Padre SJ on twitter.com. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. If you follow me, you'll be able to find out when the next episode of Padre's Corner is going to be coming out. You'll be able to find out what I'm going to be doing next on the Twit TV network, and you'll just be able to see what the life of an Uber geek looks like. Also, go ahead and follow my YouTube page at youtube.com/PadreSJ. It's not much to look at right now. This was actually my personal page. I'd been using gadgets forever, but I wanted to have a new project. I wanted it to be just Padre's Corner. So please follow, and you'll be able to get new episodes as they go up. Finally, thank you so very much for being with me. Thank you for everyone who made this show possible, to Lisa and Leo, and to all the wonderful people who make Twit go. I'm Father Robert Ballas saying thank you and goodbye from Padre's Corner.